What's up, everybody? Justin Nault here with today. I am joined once again by the amazing, incredible, brilliant Dr. Anthony J. And today we're going to be diving into genetics, genetics testing, the human genome, I guess we'd call it. So I'll let Anthony just let us know what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah, rock on. I mean, so you actually sent me your DNA data from what, 23andMe or Ancestry? I forget.
Yep, that was 23andMe, just the raw
23andMe.
data.
Yep, exactly. And that's the beauty of both of those companies, ancestry.com, 23andme.com. They send you I mean, you can access your own raw data file. Some of these DNA sequencing companies, they won't even give you your own data. So they'll do your DNA and then they keep all the information on there and they won't even give it to you. So if you do have your DNA done, make sure it's through a company that will actually give you the data. And
I didn't even realize some companies did that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absurd, but it doesn't mean anything to most people, right? It's like thousands of pages of just code, right?
Yeah.
So for most people, it's not even beneficial. But of course, there's a free online software you can use to kind of look through some of these genes that you might have problems with or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I use it, and I have my own software. I have my own custom written script that I use, and it spits out a report for me, and it analyzes people's genetics, and then I go through that with people through my consulting company.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing that for a lot of years now. I started my consulting company in 2010, and I actually started it because I don't remember if we probably didn't talk about this last time, but I used to design viruses. I was a virus designer.
We did touch on that briefly. Yeah, you work for the government,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And so
Crazy.
I started a consulting company in order to basically get these contracts that I was doing anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say virus designer, I was creating these neutered viruses, we call them. Because you take out all the bad genes and you basically design the DNA, you put it in human cells, and then the human cells will spit. I mean, these are just cells in a dish, right?
Right.
But the cells will actually spit out virus for you into the liquid that the cells grow in. And then you harvest those viruses, you centrifuge them down, you spin them down.
Wow.
And then you can take those viruses, inject them into animals, and do all kinds of genetic manipulations in animal studies to try and cure Alzheimer's and things. It wasn't like we were making evil viruses.
Right.
We're actually trying to do some beneficial research with them.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, just with all that DNA work I was doing, this was all in the midst of 23andMe having issues with the FDA because they were basically sticking their middle finger up at the FDA and saying, you guys can't shut us down. The FDA shut them down. And then so people were coming to me and saying, well, can you look at my DNA code? Because 23andMe is unable to do anything with this genetic information, but I still have all this DNA information. So people were coming to me and I did my own, I did, all my extended family, all this. And it's really powerful, the information you get. And even today, 23andMe, they'll give you these reports. And you probably have experienced this where they give you like a report and it'll tell you your eye color.
Yeah.
It'll tell you like if you have a photic reflex, if you're going to sneeze when you go out in the sun or things like this, like just meaningless information.
Yeah, they even say like you probably don't like cilantro or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
it might taste like soap. Yeah. And it's like people get those reports and they think that the information is just really limited. So all they use it for is ancestry. But in reality, the health information is there. It's super interesting and quite deep.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, what we're going to go through today so that people can understand some of the potential. And I guess we'll use your genetics to kind of frame that discussion.
Yeah. And I obviously have, I'm excited about this for selfish reasons, just because I want to dive into my information as well. But yeah, I've looked into like the like Promethease. I've run mine through Promethease. Yep. I did one called DNA Fit, which was not free. That was a little pricey. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it really is, without having like, I don't have a PhD in biochem or like a background in genetics or anything. So it's even something like Promethease was just so overwhelming for me. I'm like, Wait a minute, what am I even looking at here? It's really, really complex.
That's a good point. That's the other extreme. I mean, on the one extreme, you've got these reports that are pretty much meaningless and just superficial and silly. And then on the far other extreme, you've got way too much information. And the reason for that is they'll list all the associations. So like scientists will do a study on a specific gene and they'll find like a 1.3-fold increased risk for something, like 1.3-fold increased risk for some kind of cancer or something.
Yeah.
or 1.5-fold increased risk for this kind of cancer, 1.4-fold increased risk for that kind of cancer, whatever. And you can get these online reports and it'll give you like hundreds of pages of those risks that you have for all these little things. The problem with that is when scientists repeat those exact studies with larger groups of people,
Mm-hmm.
they virtually never hold up.
Okay.
Because the association is so small and humans are so diverse. And
Yeah.
so the problem is it's confusing more so than helpful, because people are all concerned about all these millions of risks that they have, or thousands
Yeah.
of risks or whatever. I mean, we have 25,000 genes. So, there's a lot of potential there to have just pages and pages and pages of, association studies. And so anyways, what I look for is anything that's twofold or
Okay.
higher,
Okay.
you know,
So that would be a 200% increase, right?
well, it's usually, it depends. I mean, usually you'd say 100%, but it depends
Okay,
on,
that's a twofold. Okay, thank you for clearing that
yeah,
up. Like, wait a minute, 2x or?
yeah, yeah. But with these association studies, they're done a little bit differently in certain cases, but and it does depend on the gene and what the biochemistry is and what the gene is
Sure, sure.
doing and the function of the enzyme, whatever. Because sometimes, for example, you'll have a genetic study and it'll show like a 70%. Well, let me just use a specific example, right?
Okay.
So one of the specific examples I look at is beta carotene conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Your body doesn't use beta carotene. People think like carotene is a vitamin,
Right.
right? Vitamin A.
Mm-hmm.
And plants make carotene. So people say eat carrots, they're good for your eyes. That's where carotene was discovered. It was
Right.
discovered in carrots. And that's what makes carrots orange. So they say eat carrots, they're good for your eyes. But the problem is a lot of people have a genetic issue where they have literally like an 80% reduced ability to convert carotene to retinol.
Mm-hmm.
Retinol is what's good for your eyes. That's where retinol was discovered. That's the actual vitamin A in animals, right? So plants, carotene, animals, retinol.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to convert that. So if you eat carrots, if you eat plants, you have to convert the carotene to retinol for you to use it. But some people literally have an 80% reduced conversion of that process. And of course, those people need to get retinol,
Right.
right? It's like the carotene is not really helping them out. So rather than trying to eat carrots, it's better to eat liver,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because liver is by far the most rich source of retinol, and it's a hugely important vitamin, especially for your stem cells and your immune system.
Yeah.
People talk about the eyes, right? Like retinol because it's named retinol, but in reality, if you're getting sick all the time, you're probably just deficient in retinol.
Okay.
I mean, it depends. There's a lot of factors. Maybe you're exposed to mold. Who knows? Whatever. But
Right.
the point
Right.
is, a lot of cases where people just have a really poor immune system, they just aren't getting enough retinol,
Mm-hmm.
and they think they are because they're eating carrots, whatever. But that's one of these things where you don't find the association studies in human studies, but you look at the actual enzyme, the actual thing that's converting beta carotene to retinol, and you see an 80% problem, right?
Right. That's
So,
significant.
that's a similar kind of situation where I'll flag that, like that's
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's another caveat with that. And the reason genetics are so important is because, excuse me, if you just take that one gene and you say, well, all I want to know about is that one gene, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you can decide whether carrots are sufficient for getting a retinol or whether you need to get liver or something like that, right?
Sure.
Because liver is by far the biggest, the most effective way to get more retinol. The problem with that is a lot of people have high iron genes,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have
Yeah, we're going to
genes
talk about that today.
exactly, because you've got one of these genes.
Yeah.
It's like in your case, it's called the homeostatic iron regulator. It's HFE,
Mm-hmm.
FE meaning iron in science. And if you've got problematic iron genes and then you're eating loads of liver to get that retinol, well, that's a really risky situation. And I know a lot of people that do that. I was just at a conference. It's the Weston A. Price conference. I gave a couple talks there.
Yeah.
One of them was actually 2-hour talk on estrogen. And then, of course, another talk I gave was just a normal 1-hour talk, and it was on stem cells,
Mm-hmm.
Which actually included some of this information on retinol specifically. But, like everybody in the Weston A. Price, I love the movement because they have all these great farmers and this network of farmers that are raising animals in a real sustainable, healthy way without the sprays and the herbicides and the atrazine and all this. And so I was talking to a lot of people at lunch, and everybody's eating liver. It's like
Yep.
like part of the group, like basically you have to eat liver if you're going to be part of the group.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And a lot of the people, man, they had really high iron, and
Yeah.
they were concerned about it. But there's a lot of other people that kind of scoff at the concern. But in reality, I'm more worried if you've got high iron than if you've got low iron, because high iron is more of a risk for damaging your arteries.
Right, right. And that was what I discussed that with Paul Saladino, because I was eating 4 ounces of liver a day. So I have a bunch of local farmers here that I know that are all, rotational grazing, regenerative agriculture. It's fantastic. So I just get these loads of liver for a great price because I know the guys, and I was eating 4 ounces of liver a day. And then we get, like I sent you that blood work earlier this morning as well. It's like my ferritin levels like off the charts. And then Paul goes to my 23andMe data and he's just like, oh, you have one of these SNPs that you're talking about for hemochromatosis, I guess.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I want to dig into all that, but so first, I just want to let people know too that I guess the danger here, the most famous story of this would be like an example, Angelina Jolie, who ran her 23andMe data and then decides to get what we would call, I guess, a preventative mastectomy, and which was probably completely unnecessary. So that's where this can get kind of dangerous, where you'd really want somebody like you. Because there are a lot of companies right now. It's like, pay me $15 and I'll send you this printed PDF of your what to do with your nutrition and stuff. And that gets a little scary, I think.
Yeah, that's why you have to sit down and talk to people about it, I feel, because the reports, I mean, unless you're an actual scientist or you've actually had training in a lot of this information, it's one of those things you really need to sit down and discuss some of the intricacies in certain cases. You don't always need to discuss every intricacy. Obviously, it's a waste of time, but there's always these questions that come up where they should come up. It's funny. We were just before the show, we were talking about Joe Rogan and Chris Kresser and what's the MMA fighter with
Wilkes,
the documentary?
James
Wilkes, and that whole discussion. And apparently somebody had said that, and this was on that episode, somebody had said, oh, you did 1,000 hours or 3,000 hours of research. They should just give you a PhD. Right. And I just kind of laugh at that because, every like Twitter nerd, like PubMed searching nerd should have a PhD if that's actually true, because the problem with that idea, like give him a PhD. He's looked at science data for 1,000 hours. The problem is part of the process of doing science is actually doing these experiments so the weaknesses, right? So you don't just totally jump in with both feet and believe everything the studies say.
Right.
You have to actually have experience doing studies in certain cases.
Yeah.
Really understand the flaws or the weaknesses or the interpretation, and how scientists sometimes will spin the information to try and make it look better and this and that.
So that's the other problem I see is people that even if you've spent any amount of time on PubMed or Google Scholar or anything like that, like you can absolutely pull up any study, scroll down to the bottom and be like, conclusion, and just read that. And you just decide that this is the way things are. And the other thing is, like, I mean, I tell people this all the time. Like, I have a bunch in my office, I have a bunch of biochemistry textbooks, and like guys like Rob Wolf have been like, read this biochemistry textbook. And I'm like, he's a biochemist. Cool. I'm going to read this textbook. That doesn't mean that I understand this at the level that he does. It's just not the case. Like, I would never say I've read these 4 or 5 biochemistry textbooks. I'm an expert in biochemistry. Not even close. It's so much more intricate than that. It's like, you've devoted your life to that the way I devoted my life to being a professional musician. So it's like, if you want to learn how to be an expert musician, sure, I'll help you with that. But it's a good
example.
These Twitter guys,
it's a great example, because it would be like somebody who is just reading books about music and has never actually played an instrument, saying that they should have a PhD in music or something.
Yeah, I look at like the outlier Malcolm Gladwell stuff, and I'm like, oh, like I literally crossed 10,000 hours of stage time when I was like 18 years old. So
wow, awesome. Yeah. But I just went to. I'm sure you've heard of Chris Jansen. I just went to a Chris Jansen concert, man.
Cool.
He's awesome. He's a country music star who he plays the harmonica like a fiend, and he was playing the drums at his own concert. And of course, he's the main act. He's like the singer as well.
Yep. I love when guys do that. When he
goes around and takes other people's instruments.
Yep. That's killer, man. And that's how you're dealing with a serious musician too. In my opinion, I don't know. People can debate that, but Yeah, so I
Shit.
want to give people an idea too of just a couple things before. So when we dive into this actual report, but I just want to give people an example, like someone who's coming to this completely cold.
Mhm.
If we can just walk them through what you're looking for.